Hi, I'm Stephanie Sylvan, one of the founders and owners of Your Teen Media. Today's workshop focuses on what is being referred to as COVID slide, which is the potential loss in learning as a result of school closures and online learning, as well as offering families some solutions. I want to thank our sponsor, Sylvan Learning Centers. They offer live online tutoring to help families keep the learning going. Find out how their expert teachers can personalize face-to-face tutoring sessions. Visit them at sylvanlearning.com. Enjoy the workshop.
Hi, Sue Borison here from Your Teen Media. I'm here with Emily Levitt, Vice President of Learning at Sylvan Learning. So typically, this is a time where we start to talk about the summer and what's going to happen between the end of the year and the start of the next year. But
Right.
This is unusual this year because we have all the extra COVID time.
That's right.
Is there a name? Are we calling it something different? We're not going to call it summer slide now.
No, I've heard some experts start to refer to it as the COVID slide, which is separate from summer slide, but we're having COVID slide at the end of the school year, which means it's going to bump right up against the summer slide to make one giant slide.
So what should we be worried about as parents? Like there's, at this point, there might be some inclination to say, you know what, this is a crazy time. I'm done with all of this. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I would say that it all depends on your family situation. If you can keep up with what the school is asking you to do, I think that's great. But the school districts understand that not every family can do that. If you have a family where the adults are first responders and you have to have an older child watch the younger children, having schooling at home is more practical for some families than others.
I can't even imagine those families with like younger kids, but
Yeah.
even middle school kids. The challenge is so overwhelming for parents to be getting their own work done
Yeah.
and to be monitoring their kids. So what we're hearing about on our end a lot is that, kids are just not wanting to do this online learning.
Yeah.
And so do you have any suggestions for what parents can do to motivate their kids?
Sure. I would say make sure you build in time for a lot of breaks and really kind of pay attention for early signs of burnout, because I think that's something that all of us are kind of dealing with, adults and middle schoolers. There's only so many hours a day you can kind of sit in front of the computer on yet another Zoom meeting or another Google Hangout. And if you can keep an eye on how your kids are doing, you'll know or have them tell you when it's time for a break so that they pace themselves, they don't get overwhelmed, and you can kind of take every day in manageable bite-sized pieces.
So for the schools, I think like I've heard that there's two different ways schools are doing this. Like some are actually having a teacher in front of a room and others are really just putting up assignments and you reach out to the teacher if you need help.
Right.
So for the middle school kids who are just getting assignments and there's no real structure to the day, I mean, we all need some structure. How does a parent help that age kid set up some structure for their day?
This is actually a perfect time, middle school, for them to work with you to try to figure out a good, meaningful schedule, because that switch from elementary to middle leaves a lot of kids kind of in the lurch because they're expected to be more organized and handle time management more than they ever have in the past. And in normal times, that can be really tricky for a lot of kids. So now that we have this extraordinary situation on top of that, the kids are probably going to need a lot more support in middle school than they would have ordinarily. So it's a great time to work with your child, put together a schedule together, and then stick to it the best that you can.
Are there any like concrete steps that you recommend parents do to like create the environment so that it's easier for their kids to stay focused?
Sure. I would have a dedicated place where you'll be doing the schooling. Make sure that it is as free from distractions as possible, which can be tricky depending on how many people are in your house and how big your house is.
So get rid of a few kids.
Right. Yeah. It's outside time for the other kids. Yeah, but really try to make sure that they have all of the materials they might need, that they have, Wi-Fi access, everything's ready to roll so that when they do sit down, they can really focus on what they should be doing.
Is there like a reasonable amount of time? I mean, does it vary per child, or would you say like most middle school kids can only sit for?
Sure. I mean, I would say after an hour, have them get up and move around a little bit. I wouldn't let them go more than an hour, seated in front of a screen, because that fosters burnout. So really, work a little, take a break, work a little, play a little, and really try to keep a lot of variety in the day. I think we forget, kids are at school 6, 7, 8 hours, but they're not sitting at a desk working that entire time. They have art and music and lunch and time between classes and, gym, and so they have a lot of breaks and variety during the day to keep it from being really monotonous and grueling. And so it's a good idea to try to mimic that same thing at home. Give them a lot of variety.
And are the kids good about partnering in that? Like if you were to sit down and say, what do you need? Like how long can you sit? Are those middle school kids able to articulate what they need?
Usually, I would say don't let them be the sole person responsible for making the schedule, but they're certainly old enough to work with you to come up with something that feels good for both of you. They should definitely have input. They're old enough for input for sure.
And they're probably more inclined to do it if you've decided on this together instead of imposed it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Get their buy-in. If they feel like they've had some hand in making it, they're more apt to stick with it.
So this is such a weird time right now.
Yeah.
Do you what's the relationship between the parents and the school at this moment if it's not going well for your kid?
Yeah. I would keep in touch with the teacher as much as you possibly can. That at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do remotely, but if you understand the teacher's expectations, work with them to come up with alternative ideas if your child is just really stuck. The teacher can really help you come up with some really good strategies or maybe alternative plans if your child's just really not going along with the original game plan.
Oh, so that takes me to the next question. Like your kid's really just refusing to do the schoolwork.
Yeah.
What other ways can we keep, people say just have them read, but what other things can we do with our kids if we don't want to duke it out with them? We don't want to wake up every day dreading the arguments that we're going to have. So what other things can we do?
Sure. Reading is always valuable, and reading anything is valuable. It doesn't have to be great works of literature, really anything will do. With reading, the more you do, the better you get. The more you comprehend, the faster you can read, the bigger your vocabulary becomes. So reading is always valuable. Same thing can be true of writing, whether it's formal or informal. And now that the weather's nicer, have them get outside. There's a lot of valuable things to learn and know and do outdoors. And it's a great place for science lessons, art. You can go read under a tree. Fresh air is a great thing.
I love it. If I'm working and my husband's working or my partner's working or I'm doing it all alone, can I give the assignment to create the assignment?
Sure. I would give them some parameters, maybe give them some idea starters, or maybe say you have these 4 choices. You can pick whichever one of these you want. So again, give them limited freedom, I like to call it, to help design their day, and you'll get better buy-in and better results.
I remember a teacher giving an assignment for one of my kids. My son had to go and find birds. It was so old school. We just walked around and he saw birds, he took pictures and he looked them up, and it was a science project.
Yeah, it's great because I feel like there used to be a lot of room in life to go do those kinds of things, and we've kind of gotten away from it. Everyone's very scheduled these days, and the silver lining here is that we can really slow down and go outside with the bird guidebook and just kind of look in the backyard and see what we can see. It can really be a cool way to spend time with your kids.
Do you have any I love this assignment, it's always been one of my favorites?
I do. This is actually, I was a language arts teacher, and one of my favorite assignments I used to do was have the kids invent a theme restaurant. So, sports or music or whatever it might be. And they had to use descriptive writing to come up with all the different items on the menu, but then they had to actually build the physical menu. So there was an art lesson in there, and they had, fun with the themes and come up with the names and the descriptions, and then, they could invite each other to go kind of eat at their virtual restaurants. It usually took about a good week to get everything done, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, we have a lot of time on our hands right now. That's a great thing to do. And you could actually have your dinner be part of that story.
For sure. Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
So I'm overwhelmed. My kids are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I don't have the time. I don't have the inclination, whatever it is. Is there ever a moment to outsource this?
Yes, for sure. We there are lots of good times to outsource something like this. I think part of it is there's a different dynamic between a parent and children than there is between a teacher and a child. And sometimes that parent-child dynamic does not lend itself well to instruction, as I think millions of parents are finding out right now. So a good time to outsource it would be if the frustration is just really building a lot at home, and there's a lot of battles, over the work at home. It's a good time to call in reinforcements. Another good time to call in reinforcements is if you suspect that your child was behind before the COVID closures. Now is the perfect time to get them caught up to where their peers were, because during the school year, a student who's behind has to kind of like chase their peers. Like the class moves forward, but they're still trying to catch up. And so those kids have to actually move faster than the class so that they can make up that lost ground. Well, now there's not a whole lot of new learning happening. And so outsourcing it to someone who can get them caught up is going to put them in a great place when school starts in the fall.
So how do I, as a parent, like I choose Sylvan, of course.
Yes.
And what should I do in preparation of that phone call to make sure that I'm going to get the most out of this experience?
Sure. I would say start with an understanding of what you personally want for your child. And it could be kind of a general goal. It could be, increased confidence or catching up to, where they should be for their grade level. So my kids go to Sylvan twice a week, and having been a language arts teacher, I wasn't as comfortable teaching math, and I knew that I really wanted to keep them moving while they were on the school closure break. And I especially have one student who I knew was behind. One of my kids was behind in math, and I really didn't want him to lose that ground that he was starting to make up. So having them do Sylvan remotely was really a godsend, because it took the school a while to figure out how they were going to do online instruction. So instead of having 3 weeks lost, I was able to keep them going with their math instruction. They didn't really skip a beat. And that's the one area I know I don't have to worry about, because I outsource it to people that I trust, and I know that the kids are making progress. It's a good feeling.
That's great. So in middle school, should I, as a parent, have a relationship with the tutor, or should I be stepping back and should it only be with my middle school kid?
I think getting to know the tutor a little bit just at the beginning, just to make sure that the lines of communication are open, is fine. But there's no need to hover. There's no need to be a part of every single lesson. I would just say, make sure your students logged on when they're supposed to be logged on. Be in the next room if they need anything, but there's no need for you to sit with a middle school age child during a remote session.
And how about follow-ups and stuff like that? Should that be the kid to the tutor, or do you encourage parents to reach out also?
I would encourage parents to reach out also. There shouldn't be a need to reach out after every single session, but every few weeks it's good to check in and make sure that the student's still on track. The pace at which you wanted your child to learn is still on the right pace, and just make sure that everything's going according to plan.
So these kids are coming to you in we're in a crisis situation.
Yeah.
And you might, as a parent, be noticing or wondering whether something is going on with your child that you might not have picked up at school because the teacher was accommodating them or whatever it is. Well, if you suspect or if you don't suspect, is an assessment a good idea?
An assessment's always a good idea, just to kind of level set before you start any kind of tutoring or instruction at home, because then you can say, all right, well, where are we? And that starting point is going to be really essential to what you decide to do next. So if your child is on schedule or ahead of schedule, then you can supplement with lots of different fun, hands-on, self-selected reading, all kinds of enrichment kind of activities. But if your child is a little behind or on level but kind of slow to complete their work, then you're going to need a different approach. So getting that assessment result is really key to make sure that you get the right kind of instruction based on that child's needs and then your goals as a family.
So at this point in time, parents are frustrated.
Yeah.
They're probably suffering when they make that phone call to
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what do you say to them right now to give them hope and just like lighten their load?
Sure. We, in the centers, when they're open, every director keeps a box of tissues in their office, because when families come to us, they're very stressed, they're very worried. They've probably tried a couple other strategies before they come to Sylvan, and their emotions run high because you want what's best for your kids. So to reassure parents, we say the same thing now that we would, pre-closure, which is, um, we know what we're doing. We can figure out what the obstacles are. Hand your worries over to us, and we've got it.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Thank you.